Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Okay. Now, what I want to do, doesn't matter what kind of excitation frequency I have to this spring mass damper system. This should be able to measure all those acceleration. Okay. So basically, what do I do? If I can measure ut displacement, what happens in this case? Let us see here. At the base of this spring mass damper system, okay, we can attach either a digital reader, okay, or in the old time simply a ink was used. So let us say if this system is, if you look at the top view of the system, okay, let us say this is the top view of the system, something like this, and then there is a rolling paper. Okay, so if the system and the rolling paper actually moving in this direction, so it is actually rolling in here. Okay, as the system moves back and forth, okay, it will basically plot the displacement. Remember, if you attach anything to this mass here, it will plot whatever the displacement it is experiencing. So it is plot the displacement. However, from this one I am seeing that if I can somehow measure this displacement, my acceleration would be the same provided this factor is equal to, or this factor is independent of the applied frequency and this factor is independent of applied frequency. Then it does not matter whether I apply a high frequency load or apply a very slow load. It would still give me the UG, which is independent of the frequency. Okay, so the idea here is if I can get ut measure from this graph here, then acceleration, to measure acceleration, all I need to do is to make this independent of the excitation frequency and this phi by omega also to be independent of the excitation frequency. Okay, now if you remember the RD plot that you had, okay, and remember I do not get omega n square, because if I'm using the same accelerometer, for that accelerometer omega n would be same, right? It would be the stiffness of the accelerometer divided by the mass. Okay, so all I want to do is to make RD and phi by omega to be independent of the excitation frequency. Okay, so the goal is make RD and phi by omega independent of the excitation frequency. Okay, because I want to measure the acceleration. I don't want that it depends on the frequency of that one, because if it depends on the frequency, every time there is a different frequency, I will get a different acceleration, which is not correct. Okay, so to do that, remember the graph that we have for RD, it looks like something like this, right? For a small value of damping, but for large value of damping, it used to look like this, right? Something like this. Okay, so let us say this is RD and this is omega by omega n. This is 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay, now what do we see in this case? That for large value of damping, and especially in this zone here, my RD is approximately equal to 1. Okay, and if we go and look at closely here, up to the value of omega by omega n is smaller than 0.5, and this damping curve for a value of approximately 0.7 or 70%, okay, this RD is almost equal to 1. So it is independent of the applied frequency and it is independent of the, basically it is independent of the applied frequency. Okay, so for these combination, my RD is equal to 1. Okay, so if I have an accelerometer which can satisfy this criteria, then it can measure the acceleration without depending upon the excitation frequency. Now, second thing is to make phi by omega independent of the excitation frequency. Again, if you remember, the plot for the phase angle for a very small, and if it's 0, 90, 180 degree. For very small value of damping, it was something like a step function. As you increase the damping, it started to become like this. And for very large value of damping, it was almost like this. Okay. Almost like a straight line. Okay. So again for phi by omega as well, if we consider zeta equal to 0.7, what you will see that this straight line is actually obtained. A straight line means that phi by omega, remember this is phi here and this is omega, or omega by omega, it doesn't matter. This phi by omega n is a straight line for this value, okay, and this range 0 to, let us say here 0.5, 1, okay, 1.5. So I'm considering again the same range for which both criteria are satisfied. Okay, so for this case, phi by omega 1 is basically constant. Okay, and that is what we want. We want it to be constant, does not depend on the excitation frequency. Okay, so if I have an accelerometer for which omega n, the natural frequency is such that, okay, it is omega by omega n is less than 0.1, and I provide damping which is as high as 70%, then that would measure whatever the displacement I get, the same displacement would be the acceleration. Okay, this phi by omega is now some constant. So the peak value of both would be same. Remember, there was 1 by omega n square term as well, but that is instrument constant. It is not going to change. So whatever displacement I obtain on that graph would be my acceleration value with some factor multiplied to it. Okay. So the conclusion is, if I have a spring mass damper system, okay, with a frequency of, let us say, natural frequency of 50 Hertz, then it can measure all excitations, okay, all excitations for which omega by omega n is equal to less than equal to 0.5. So that means it can measure all excitation frequency below 25 Hertz, okay, provided that damping in this spring mass damper system is 0.7, around 0.7. Okay, and this is the concept, the instrumentation concept that is used for measurement of acceleration. So accelerometer is like, in terms of basic concept, it is simple. It is a single degree of freedom system, and the principle that is used to obtain the acceleration is this, that your applied displacement, which can be measured on a paper or a digital, digital meter, okay, the displacement is same as the acceleration if these factors are independent of the applied frequency. Okay, so we measure the displacement, but that is the same as acceleration if the accelerometer has these properties. So I can also say, if I want to measure up to 10 Hertz, if my frequency content, remember, if you consider any earthquake, it is actually not a harmonic load, and these solutions that we have obtained are for harmonic load, right? This is actually made up of several harmonic excitation. You can think it made up of combination of several harmonic excitation. Okay, so when you add it, you might be able to obtain this. Okay, so this one has frequency varying between small frequency, let us say 0.1 Hertz, to very high frequency, let us say 25. Okay, and if I want to measure this, I need at least accelerometer which has natural frequency which is 2 times the excitation frequency. Okay, that would be 50 Hertz. All right, then let us move to the last topic of this chapter, which is energy dissipation. Okay, energy dissipation in damped harmonic motion. Remember, we had done this for undamped free vibration and damped free vibration. Now we are going to do that energy dissipation in damped harmonic motion. Now, one of you asked me in a previous class, what happens to the damping during the steady state phase? Okay, I told you that if you have a harmonic motion, right, initially you would have transient phase which would die out due to damping in the system, and the total response would converge to the steady state response after some time. Okay, then somebody asked me, well, what happens, what is the role of damping during the steady state? Okay, so we are going to find that now. Okay, what happens, what is the role of damping during the steady state? Okay, so consider this, during the steady state, what is my damping force? C times U dot, okay, which is nothing but C. Okay, what is my UT here? UT is U naught sine omega t minus phi. This is the solution for the steady state response of a single degree of freedom system, right? So Cu dot is C U naught omega times cos omega t minus phi. Now, energy dissipated due to damping can be, or I am considering just one cycle, so 0 to t. Okay, in one cycle I can write it as, what is the energy dissipated in by any force? It is force times the displacement. So F times du. Okay, so this is 0, t I am going to write as 2 pi by omega, because in steady state the system is vibrating at the excitation frequency, right? So Fd I am going to write it as Cu dot, and du I am going to write it as U dot times dt. Okay, basically this U dot is du by dt. Okay, so I'm writing it like that. So let me write it as Cu dot dt. So energy dissipated in a viscous damping can be represented as Cu dot square dt. All right, and this I can write as Cu dot is, okay, U dot I have already calculated here. Okay, this expression. So I would get this as C U dot omega cos omega t minus phi square times dt. So you can integrate this and you can find out what do you get this expression. Okay, remember, this is the general expression. Okay, and this is the general expression. Both are general expressions, including this, of course. However, depending upon what is the value of U dot, okay, this expression would change for a different kind of system. So if somebody has given you Fd as some function of velocity and displacement, then you need to substitute it here to again get the energy dissipation. It would not always be the same. This is only for linear viscous damping. Okay, if a different variation of damping force is given to you, for example, let us say C times not U but U dot square, a non-linear damper. Okay, or many times it is also a fractional damper like this. Do not get scared, just substitute it here, integrate it, and find out the damping energy dissipated in that due to that damping force. Okay, so if you integrate it here, okay, let me call this WD, okay, or let me call this ED because I want to use the same notation. So energy dissipated due to damping is actually come out to be C omega U naught square. Okay, this is the energy dissipated due to damping, and there would be a pi term here as well. Okay, so energy dissipated due to viscous damping depends on C, which is the damping coefficient, the excitation frequency omega, it also depends on omega, and it depends on the amplitude of the motion. Okay, so if you are applying excitation frequency which is very high frequency, then it would basically dissipate more energy compared to low frequency motion. And if your amplitude of the motion is high, then again it is going to dissipate more energy. Okay, this can also be written as, remember, I can write this further as zeta is equal to C by C critical, which was 2k by omega n. Okay, so in this case, okay, I can write this as, okay, remember at the frequency in a steady state, omega is equal to omega n. Okay, so I will write it like this so that I can substitute the value of C omega as, okay, 2k zeta. So this I will write it 2, okay, or let me keep writing in omega n. If your system is vibrating at some other frequency, okay, not exactly during the steady state, but you are applying at some other frequency and the system has some other frequency, okay, then I will write, because when omega equal to becomes omega n, then you will have resonance. Okay, so for any general case, I'm going to use this. Okay, so that, let me modify this. C I can write as 2k zeta by omega n. Okay, so if we substitute it here, I will get pi times 2k zeta by omega n times omega times u naught square, which I can arrange it to write as 2 pi zeta omega by omega n, and this is k u naught square. Why I am doing this, I'll show you just in a second why I'm writing this expression in this manner. Okay, so what happens basically, the damping in the system, the energy dissipated in a single cycle of motion, can be written in this form. Now when omega becomes equal to omega n, okay, at steady state, okay, first the damping would increase, the amplitude of the motion would increase, but after some time that energy dissipation would become constant. Okay. Now I've already said that Et, let us go back to previous equation and write it pi c omega u naught square. Now you see that energy dissipation in a single cycle is actually constant. Okay, it does not depend on time. Okay, so it is not increasing, it only depends on the amplitude of that motion. Okay, now let us see what was the energy input to the system, so that I can figure out in steady state with respect to energy input how much of the energy is dissipated in the system. Okay, so energy input, I can again find that applied force times the displacement it is producing would be the energy input in the system. And for a single cycle of motion, I can write it like that. Now P du again I can write as u dot dt, and P I can write as P naught sine omega t. This was my applied force. Okay, and u dt would be C omega cos omega t minus phi times dt, 0 to 2 pi by omega. So you can go ahead and integrate this expression, okay, to see what do you get as the expression for the energy input to the system, and then compare to the basically energy dissipated in that cycle. So if you integrate it, let me just write it, 0 to pi by omega, this would be P naught C omega sine omega t times cos omega t minus phi dt. Okay, this is the expression that you will get. Okay, if you integrate this term, this you can take out, you will get as pi P naught times u naught, okay, times sine of phi. Okay, and you know that what is sine of phi? Sine of phi I can write it as 2 zeta omega by omega n divided by 1 minus omega by omega n square plus 2 zeta omega by omega n. Okay, if you remember, how did we get? Remember, tan phi was this. Okay, tan phi was 2 zeta omega by omega n, 1 minus omega by omega n square. Okay, so if you consider this, you can easily get sine phi as this, and this is nothing but 2 zeta omega by omega n, and this whole term is nothing but your RD. Okay, and RD is what? RD is peak dynamic displacement by peak static displacement, which is P naught by K. Okay, so you can substitute the value of sine phi here. Okay, so that you can get it as 2 pi zeta, and this would be omega by omega n times K u naught square. Okay, and this expression, basically whatever the expression you have got, energy input to the system is energy dissipated in a cycle. What does it mean? In steady state, we are talking about steady state, whatever energy that you are inputting to the system through P equal to P naught sine omega t is actually getting dissipated through the damping. Physically, what does it mean? If your system is vibrating and whatever energy that you are inputting, exact same amount of energy is dissipated, that means that amplitude should remain constant. It should not change. So whatever state you were in, that state should continue, because you are not giving any additional to increase that, any additional energy to increase the amplitude of the system. Okay, whatever energy you are inputting is dissipated in that damper. Okay, and that is what we have observed, that in steady state, the peak displacement does not actually change. The amplitude of the motion does not actually change. Okay, so one might ask, then what happens to the spring force and what happens to the kinetic energy? Well, you can write down the expression for the spring force, and let me do that anyway quickly. The spring force I can write is as, okay, Fs, the spring force, times du. Okay, and you know that Fs is K times u and du is u times dt. Again, substitute the same expression and you will see in a cycle of motion this is equal to 0. Similarly, kinetic energy is nothing but inertia force times du. Okay, and that you can write m double dot u times dt, and this goes to again 0. So what happens during steady state, over the cycle of motion, during the cycle, the energy, kinetic energy and the potential energy, or here it would be the spring or the internal energy, strain energy, those would change. However, there is no change over the cycle. Like initially, if some energy was there at the end of the cycle, okay, there is no net change in the energy. Okay, so the energy would also fluctuate. Okay, it is going to, because remember, your deformation starts with certain value, it goes to again certain value, and then basically, okay, so let us say it is only up to this point. Okay, so if I draw it something like this here, okay, then over the one cycle of the motion, okay, you do not see the change in energy. Okay, so the potential energy becomes 0 over the cycle. Okay, and same goes for the kinetic energy. All right. So this is basically how the energy principle works during the steady state motion of a damped system. All right. Now let us say, how does the damping force, if I have a damping force which I'm representing as C times U dot, how does it actually look? Okay, so what I want to do, I want to find out the damping energy as a function of displacement, not velocity, and then try to plot it. Okay, if I do that, let me write it this U dot as C times C omega cos omega t minus 5. I've differentiated the displacement once, not omega, this would be omega u naught. Okay, so my FD is C omega u naught, and cos omega t minus phi I can write it as 1 sine square omega t minus phi. Okay, and this I can write it as, I will bring this term in the denominator here. Okay, and this would become u divided by u naught, isn't it? My ut is what? It is u naught sine omega t minus phi. So I'm just writing my sine omega t as ut divided by u naught. Okay, So if I take the square of both sides, all right, I will get this. Okay, so this c omega u naught plus ut divided by u naught, and this is equal to 1. Now, as you would know from your mathematics class, this is nothing but an equation of an ellipse, right? So if I consider the variation of the damping force, it is actually an ellipse, okay, with intercepts for the FD and U as this. So if I draw the damping force in the vertical or the ordinate and the horizontal axis as the displacement, okay, this one is basically u naught 0 and this one is c omega, or not c omega, 0 c omega u naught. Okay, and so basically A and B are known to you. A is u naught for this ellipse and B is c omega u naught. So the damping force varies like this as a function of displacement. So if I have to find out how much is the energy dissipated, that is what? Basically FD du, right? This is what we said, right? And that is nothing but FD times du. 0 to 2 pi is basically the area under this curve. Okay, which I know what is the area of an ellipse. It is pi times the first intercept u naught times the second intercept. So I get the same expression, exactly same expression that I had got by substituting the actual expression and integrating it. So using the graphical representation as well, I get the exactly same expression. Okay, so this is how the damping force looks like. Okay, and as you would imagine, if you increase the C value, this damping curve, the size of the ellipse would actually increase with the amplitude and with the applied frequency. Okay, so this is the viscous damping. How does it look like? Now, I had told you in the very beginning that viscous damping is nothing but an approximation. Okay, the actual energy dissipation mechanism in the system might not be viscous. Okay, it might be some other type of energy dissipation, but it just mathematically it is convenient to represent all those energy dissipation mechanism as viscous damping mechanism. So one of the things that often comes that you would need to use is called equivalent viscous damping. Okay, that we had discussed. What it means that actual behavior is not actually linear viscous damping. Actual behavior is something random. So if you take a component, or if you take basically the spring force Fs, okay, and you plot it versus U, it is some random shape. Okay, that it is not viscous, because viscous is like what? Viscous is something like this. So if I want to represent the energy dissipated, okay, in this behavior through a viscous damping, then let us see how do I do that. Basically, I'm saying whatever is the energy dissipated by this ED, I'm going to equate it to the energy dissipated by the viscous damping system, so that I can find out the equivalent viscous damping. That is exactly what it means, that my system had Fs and U, which is actually some random shape. Okay, but I want to represent it as a linear system with linear viscous damping. So how could I represent this using a linear viscous system damping? Now remember, if you have Fs and U, what do? We find out a equivalent stiffness of the system, okay, which is, let us say, K. Okay, so this is for any general system. Okay, so I find out the K effective at some displacement, okay, which is, let's just say, U naught is here. Okay, so I find out the K effective. Okay, so what do I need for the system to idealize? I had a system which is requires the stiffness and the damper. These two things are required. The problem here is Fs versus U is not linear. It is some random non-linear shape. Okay, but I still want this K value and C so that I can represent it as a linear system. The question you might ask, why do I want to do that? Well, if you represent it using a linear system, you could obtain analytical solution. And you saw that in the previous topics and the previous classes, how did we do that? So we have a lot of solutions, analytical solutions available if we can somehow represent this as a linear system. Okay, so I want to do that. So I'm going to represent it as using K effective. The second thing is to find out what is the C value. Okay, or indirectly, what is the zeta value for this given system. Okay, let us see how do we do that. So I'm going to find out K effective using the plot that I have got from experiments. Okay, second thing, so K effective, I can directly get it, okay, by considering the extreme points. Next thing is to get C. C I get by equating energy dissipated in the single cycle of this structure to energy dissipated in the viscous damping, so that I can get the coefficient of equivalent viscous damping. So pi C omega u naught square, which we had also written as, remember I said that to you, why I'm writing expression like this. Okay, where did it go? Like this. Okay. Now, if let us say this is K effective and this is U naught, what is the strain energy if I deform a system or deform a string by U naught K effective? Can I say the energy in this system is half K effective U naught square? So this is the strain energy in the system. Okay, so I can write this expression. First, let me write 2 pi zeta omega by omega n square K U naught square. So this 2 pi zeta omega by omega n K naught U square, I can write this as K effective. Let me write it K effective as 2 times E S. Okay, so I can find out zeta from here as zeta equal to 1 by 4 pi omega by omega n times energy dissipated in that particular system that we want to idealize divided by the strain energy at the amplitude of the motion of that system. Okay, so we could use this formula to find out the equivalent damping ratio for the linear viscous damping representation of the system. Okay, and this we do quite frequently. For example, many of you will take research topics later in your work. You will see that the behavior, the non-linear behavior or the hysteresis behavior of a steel column, or like steel is something like this. Okay, it is something like this. And if you go ahead modeling it as a non-linear system, first thing, you don't have analytical solution available. Second thing, the solution is very computationally intensive. Okay, so what do you want to do? You want to idealize this non-linear behavior as a linear behavior with a stiffness and with this energy dissipation being represented through some damping like this. Okay, and you exactly follow the same procedure. You find out how much is the energy dissipated in a single cycle. Okay, and then you find out what is the amplitude of that cycle. Okay, so that you can find out the strain energy and then utilize this one to get the value of equivalent damping. Now what happens to do this? We usually conduct test, because this, how would you obtain? You have to conduct the test in a laboratory, and when you do that, typically to minimize any deviation, you conduct test as omega equal to omega n. Okay, so you apply the harmonic force on the column, let us say steel column or any other system, at the natural frequency of the system. So what happens? Omega by omega n is typically 1, and in that case you can also write this expression as Ed divided by Es. So further it can be simplified like that. Okay, and right now the application of this might not become clear to you immediately why we are doing this, but I have just showed you, because what will happen later if you are doing some project work or your research thesis or anything like that, this is used very frequently. If you have a non-linear system and you want to idealize it as a linear system with viscous damping, then this formula is very commonly used for this. And then at that time, when you have to utilize this, all these concepts would become absolutely clear to you, that what are the procedures we are following. Okay. Now this was the last topic of this chapter. This chapter is one of the biggest chapter in your textbook, and perhaps one of the most important chapter. If you understand this chapter, then all your concept of dynamics would almost become clear. I'm saying almost because, I mean, you would have other type of motion as well. But generally, any type of motion, especially let us say earthquake motion or periodic loading or like, other type of motion, can be represented or can be understood from understanding the behavior to a harmonic motion. Okay, because even an earthquake motion is nothing but a combination of basically different frequencies and amplitude. So if you understand the behavior with respect to a single harmonic frequency, you can extrapolate that understanding to a excitation that is made up of several of such frequencies. Okay. All right. So we are going to end this chapter here. Thank you.